Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Rethink Education Family Support Webinar. We host these webinar sessions to help families better support their children's learning when at home. And tonight's topic is an introduction to Rethink Education Caregiver Resources. I'm especially excited to share these resources with you so that you can better support your child at home. So let's get started. My name is Amber Garvey, and I am lucky enough to serve as the Rethink Education Content Development Lead. I'm a former classroom teacher, a previous district level instructional technology specialist, and most importantly, I'm a mom. So I'm a caregiver just like you. I have a very special guest in the chat, Deepak Sharma. He serves as the virtual instruction consultant for the North Central region for Rethink Education, and he brings a wealth of knowledge to our team and experience to our team. Deepak is going to be monitoring tonight's chat to provide assistance and answer any questions you may have as we go through the presentation. So let's take a look at what we will go over this evening. I'm super excited to be able to present this session tonight, focusing on the ways in which we support caregivers through our Rethink Education created resources. First, we're going to take some time to go over a few webinar basics and meeting etiquette, just some housekeeping, and then we will discuss what resources we are making available to caregivers. After that, we will talk about how these resources could be used. And next, we will discuss where you can find them and how to learn about the resources as they are created. Lastly, we will close up our session and provide some time for questions if you have any. So let's go over our meeting norms. Let's get the housekeeping out of the way. These are the expectations that we have in order to make tonight's session successful. So let's take a look at these norms. First of all, be present and actively engaged in activities and discussions. There's going to be some times this evening where I need you to participate. So I hope that you will be brave and get in the chat and share. Keeping in mind, as always, to be respectful of others. We're going to be placing questions in the chat box, which I'll go over in just a moment. And if you wouldn't mind to remain muted during the presentation, that just helps everybody to make sure there's no feedback and we can all hear one another. And we are going to start and end on time. So that ball is in my court. So we're going to be using Zoom for our platform for our webinar sessions. And I want to make sure you can locate the chat area, since this is how you will participate and hopefully engage in tonight's session. So please look for the chat icon or the chat box. I'm circling it with my mouse right now, so hopefully you can see it over on the right. So if you will look on your screen and see if you can find that. And throughout tonight's presentation, when you see the chat symbol, that's going to be your indicator that we're going to chat and engage with one another. So notice that if you want to type something in for everyone to see, you're going to see everyone in the to field. And so if you use that and you type your message and you hit send, that's going to go to everyone. If you have a particular question you want to ask privately, since Deepak's monitoring the chat, if you click on that everyone, you're going to get a drop down and you're going to see Deepak's name. And if you will choose Deepak and send him a message, that will go just to him and he'll be able to answer that question for you. But if you are going to be participating in our open chats, we want you to leave it at everyone so we can all engage and discuss things as a group. So to make sure we all know where the chat is, here's your first test. I'd like for you to find that chat box and please just enter your first name into the chat and let's just see who's here. Thank you, Rachel. And I'm very thankful Deepak is here. Thank you, thank you. Thanks, everybody. I see that you're finding that chat box, so that's super important. Now that we have a better understanding of the chat feature, you're going to be using it throughout. So let's get started on tonight's content. So before we jump into what I want to share, I do want to get a better understanding of what resources you currently use at home to support content. So what kinds of resources do you use to support your child with reading, writing, science, social studies, or math when you're at home? So if you'll just enter some of those resources in the chat, and let's see what you currently use to support your child with content. Oh, I love seeing Khan Academy. That's one of my favorites. If you haven't used Khan Academy, look at us getting some ideas from one another already. ABC Mouse, that's great, particularly for primary students. Some of you use your school's LMS or Canvas or some of those resources that you can access. Reading Eggs, great idea. Lots of different resources, and those are going to again depend on the age of your student. Starfall, yes, that's one of my favorites. Epic, great resources. Thank you for sharing those, and you can keep sharing those. It is interesting to see that most of what you've put into the chat are digital resources. So one of the things that is certainly acceptable are to find resources that aren't necessarily digital too. So there's lots of different kinds of resources that you can pull from. So now that we've kind of discussed a little bit of the resources that you use at home already to support your child, I want to take some time to share the resources that we have available to you from Rethink Education. And our age range that we support are students in grades kindergarten through 8th grade. And we're going to describe the resources, then we're going to take a look at how those resources could be used, and I'm going to hang on to this for as long as I can. Lastly, I'll show you where to find those resources. That will keep you waiting and keep you interested in what we're going to talk about. So let's see what is available. So the first type of resource that we have available to caregivers are our general caregiver guides. These guides are super easy to follow. They're available to view online, but they can also be printed. So you could have a digital resource as well as that paper resource. On the right here, you can see some screenshots of these guides. Now, in just a little bit, you can get your hands on them and take a look at those, but you can see some of those screenshots. These guides cover a variety of topics, and each guide has a specific focus. Now, some of the topics that we've had are building strong relationships with your child's teacher, staying organized for remote learning, and we've even had a guide to digital citizenship. And those are just a few of the available topics of interest to caregivers. Now, depending on the topic, guides can include specific research or quotes from experts in the field. You can also find guided questions to help you support your child's needs and action steps to take to improve support at home. These easy to use, yet comprehensive guides are also available in multiple languages. And when we go on further through the presentation, I'll show you where you can access those. The next type of resource for caregivers are our support webinars. Like this one you're attending right now, you're getting some firsthand experience. These webinars are focused on various topics of interest for parents and caregivers and how to support children at home. In the past, topics have included things like social emotional learning, fostering a rich reading environment, and even creating an at-home learning environment for students while they're at home. These sessions are presented live, just like this one, to an audience of registered participants, but then they're archived. And these archives are available on our Rethink Education Parent Resources playlist on YouTube and can be accessed at any time. So you see a screenshot there of our playlist. Live attendees are provided with the shared resources, so you'll be getting that later this evening, and presentations for reference. But the exciting thing that we're adding this year is, beginning this school year, our Rethink team will also be available to provide these webinar topics in person in participating school districts that request those services. So there are different ways to have these webinars and get this content in your hands. The final type of resource that we have available to caregivers and families are our content-specific caregiver guides. These guides are created by content experts for each specific grade level and area. We are creating guides from kindergarten through 8th grade in the areas of English language arts, science, math, and social studies. You can see samples of these guides on the right of the screen. But Deepak is also going to drop a link in the chat to a complete guide so that you can take a look at it while we talk about it in just a little bit. So these guides begin with a detailed list of what your child will learn by the end of whatever course or content area. And these statements are based on the North Carolina standards for those specific subject areas and grade levels. You'll also find links to the specific standards that will be covered in that grade level or subject area. In addition to finding out what your child will learn by the end of a course, you will also receive a list of vocabulary terms in easy to understand definitions. Each vocabulary word also has a visual example to support the comprehension of that term, and you can see over to the right a sample of that vocabulary. You're also going to find specific examples of grade level skills to help you understand how those standards are addressed. Sometimes you can read what will your child learn, and you're maybe not sure how that is measured or what kind of activities they have to do with it. And so that area helps with that. There's even a section on making connections at home to content. So this could include ways to practice at home or ideas for how to use things in your everyday life to help your student have a better understanding of the skills that they're learning in school. There's also always going to be challenges with any content area, subject area, or grade level that are expected, not only by the teachers, but also by the parents. So the challenges to expect section addresses some areas that are typically difficult for students so that you can keep an eye out for these potential challenges. Also included in the guide are questions that you can ask your child's teacher to get a better insight in how you can better support your child in that particular content area. There's even a technical help section. So if you needed to get technical help from your child's school or district, there's some ideas on what kind of information to provide. Now, to me, one of the most exciting things about these guides are that they're available not only in English, but they're also available in Spanish, Hindi, Arabic, and Vietnamese, so that you can best support your child regardless of the language that you and your family speak at home. So now that I've shared the what is available, before we continued, I'd like to see how many of you learned something new tonight. So we're going to use some reactions. So if you'll look in your Zoom area, you should see a little area that has reactions. And what I'd like for you to do is enter a thumbs up if you already knew about these resources. I got it. I knew about those. And if you were not aware of the resources before, if you would use the open mouth emoji, the shock, I'm sure you're so shocked and excited about these resources. So let's see what most of us say, thumbs up or open mouth emoji. I'll give you a few seconds to find your reaction and get those in the chat. See some thumbs up. I see some open mouths. That's great. A little bit of both. I love seeing that some of you don't know those resources, because hopefully by the end of this, you will definitely learn something. So thank you for using those reactions and for participating. So now that we know the 3 resource types that are available for caregivers, let's talk about the ways that these resources can actually be used to help your child at home. So we're actually going to go through how to help your child using these. So let's start with those general parent guides that we started with. To help us focus on these, how these can be used, I'm going to use a specific guide called How You Can Use Questions to Support Your Child's Learning. And I'm going to read aloud a small portion to you, but Deepak is also dropping a link in the chat to this whole guide. So if you'd like to look at it yourself, that's totally fine, or you can certainly follow along with me. So let's take a look at this read aloud here. So there are 2 types of questions. And so let's talk about these two types of questions. Clarifying questions are questions of fact, and they don't require much thought to answer. So an example of a clarifying question is, which book did you read today? Very self-explanatory. So probing questions require more thought to answer. They encourage students to make deeper connections and develop problem-solving skills. And an example of a probing question might be, what is something that you have in common with the main character of the book you're reading? So let's, based on this information, which type of question, clarifying or probing, will require your student to dig deeper? Which type of question will require your student to dig deeper? So in the chat, I'd like for you to enter clarifying or probing. So let's see if you learned something from that. Yes, oh yay, great, probing questions. That's exactly right, because we want to dig deeper. So we're going to probe a little deeper rather than just a clarifying question. So now I want you to take a look at this question that's in the speech bubble there. And the question says, what is the main character's name in a book? That's a clarifying question because it's just a simple answer and it's a matter of fact. So what I'd like for you to do, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you wanted to think of a way that you can turn a question about the main character into a more probing question than a clarifying question. So does anybody out there have any ideas of how to ask a question about the main character of the book, but make it a probing question? I'll give you a little think time. And typing time. Let's see. What do you like about the main character of the book? What do you dislike? Why? Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, because they're definitely going to have to think about the qualities of that character, not just what is the name. Excellent. Why do you think the main character became so upset? Oh, that's great, because then you're looking at some causes and effects in the book. That's great. Thank you for that idea. So you can see how just changing the type of question that you asked your child will get you to get a deeper answer, so that the student and your child are having to think a little deeper. So that's a way that you could take one of these guides and use some of the things that you learn in a parent guide and apply it to asking questions to your own child at home. So now that we've had, thank you so much for participating. Now that we've had a little practice using the general parent guides, let's move on to the webinars. So you're already getting firsthand experience of being in a webinar right now. You can see that when you attend live sessions, you can interact and learn from other people in the chat, and you can interact with people from across the state. But what I want us to focus in for this practical portion is thinking about the YouTube playlist. So there is a picture of the playlist here that has webinars that we have done on various topics: social emotional learning, creating good digital citizenship, fostering independence, finding technology support, lots of different topics. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat now and ask how, excuse me, does anyone out there have any ideas of how you might use these past webinars, whether it's today's topic or another topic? How could you use those? Is there a way that you can think of that those would be helpful for you? How might you take those webinars that are already recorded and use those? So pulling them out when I'm facing a need with my child, excellent. IEP meetings, parent support, that's a great idea. Watching the recordings of topics of interest and use the recordings to assist me in helping my child, that's great. That's great. Wonderful. The other thing that you could think about is we hope that you learned something from the webinars and that you can pass it on and encourage other family members and other parents that you know to attend the sessions or to watch videos on our YouTube playlist. Thank you so much. Those are some great ideas. So now let's move on to practicing applying with content-specific guides. So as I mentioned before, we are creating these guides for all K-8 core content areas, and these guides can be used completely on their own, or we are also creating courses that our teams have built for teachers and students to use. So let's take a deeper look at how these guides can be used to support your child at home. Deepak is dropping a link to the 6th grade math guide that we will be using for this part of our presentation in case you'd like a closer look, but I have a screenshot as well if you would like to take a look at that. So as he's dropping that into the chat, first let's start with this course outline area. So this is in every single guide. Even though we're looking at 6th grade math, all of our guides are made with the same format. So this shows what your child will learn in this particular grade level and content area. You could read through these and just get an idea of what they're going to learn and maybe make some notes of any you don't understand. So for example, on this 5th bullet right here, it says at the end of the course, my child will know how to find the least common multiple of 2 numbers. Well, right there, I as a caregiver may stop and say, what's a least common multiple? Because maybe I didn't learn that terminology when I was in school, or if I did, it's been way too long. So I know if this is something I don't understand, then I might have difficulty supporting my child with homework in this area. So let's take a look at this. So here is the vocabulary section of this same parent guide. And remember, I was unsure about least common multiple. Well, luckily there's a vocabulary section, so I can see right here at the bottom, here is the least common multiple, the definition, and even a graphic to help me understand it. So here's where I can find that answer by reading the definition, looking at the graphic, and these vocabulary terms, definition, and images could even be used to support your own children. So if they forget what a face is, or a pyramid, or a vertex, I could use this document to also support them, as well as helping me to remember what these things are. So the next section of the guide provides some sample problems and solutions to help caregivers understand how the content is applied. So here's a sample problem from the same 6th grade math parent guide, and this problem actually shows how to use the least common multiple to solve problems. So now I can see how knowing this term and what it means can be applied to the student's work. So this is an important thing to look at, because a lot of times you may hear something about new math or new ways to do things, and you look at it and you're like, that's not how we used to solve these problems or how I was taught to do it. And this is a great way to see how it's being taught now. So it may be taught differently, but it goes through the examples for you. So the other thing the content provides is links to external resources, and these can be websites, videos, and other digital sources to support you and your child through a particular grade level or content area. So you can see here, someone mentioned Khan Academy earlier. There's some Khan Academy resources, Virtual Nerd. All of these resources are hyperlinked, so you can go directly to those resources to get additional help to support you or to help you support your child. There's also a section called At-Home Connections, and these are just ideas for connecting the content to home. So sometimes these are in the form of questions that you can ask your children, some of those probing questions, and sometimes they're just ideas for doing things at home to explore content. So you can see here in these examples, tell me how you solved a problem that you encountered in math class today. That's asking a little more deeply than how was school, because I don't know about you, but how was school never got a really deep answer for me. And then it tells you, you can ask the question and substitute any particular word or any particular number and have them think about it. And these are just a few of the examples of some of the at-home connections. So every grade level and content area has challenges, and most often these are things that students commonly misunderstand, issues that are very typical, or areas that are often just places where mistakes happen. And teachers generally know where those areas are where they may lose students because there's a misunderstanding or a common misconception. So let's take a look at this sample under challenges to anticipate. So in this section, it says, working with integers is challenging because it is difficult to understand how adding two numbers can result in a negative number, or how subtracting two numbers can result in a positive number, and visit Virtual Nerd for more help in adding and subtracting integers. So you can see that this is could be a difficult concept for students. It might be a difficult concept for you as an adult, and there are some suggestions of where to go if you needed that additional help. Sometimes, though, the content may not be intimidating. Maybe you're a little intimidated about interacting with your child's teacher. Maybe because you don't quite understand the content yourself, or maybe because your child is struggling with it. So in the communicating with your child's teacher section, you get a list of targeted questions that you could go and take with you to help you ask what you need to do to support your child. So you can see some of the questions here. What should my child practice at home? So in particular for 6th grade math, what should my child be practicing, and what resources do you suggest that I use? And so depending on the content area and grade level, you're going to get different questions to help you really establish that relationship with your child's teacher. So before we continue, and I'll tell you where to find these resources, I'd like to know what's been the most valuable thing you've learned about these resources so far. So please enter something in the chat about these resources that you think would be helpful for you as a caregiver. Thank you. That resources might explain things that you may not understand that your child is learning. I don't remember how to math. Parent guides, vocabulary, user-friendly, organized. Great. I'm so happy that you're finding things that are relatable and helpful. That's great. And that's what we want. We want to provide something for you that you will find valuable. So thank you so much for your participation. I appreciate that. So now that we've been introduced to these resources, these 3 different type of resources, we know what they are, we know what we could use them for. So now let's focus on where we can find these valuable goodies. So on this slide, you're going to see that you can find the link to the web page where most of these resources can be found. So Deepak, if you don't mind to drop that link in the chat, and I'm actually going to go over to this resource page and walk you through this page. So this is our Rethink Education Resources for Parents and Guardians page. And if you'll scroll down, one of the things that you'll see is a little bit about what we are and what we have provided for you. But this first section, these are all those general parent guides, that first resource that we talked about. And you can see these are available as PDFs, and you can see a snippet about what each is about. And you can see that they are making these available in other languages as well. There is a section just for the Spanish ones, and then the other languages can also be found under the documents. And these are also being added to, and so it's something that you'll want to come back and check. Now, those were the general caregiver guides. And down at the bottom are content-specific parent guides. And these are the ones that are developed to go with the courses. And you can see there's some quick links here for ELA, math, science, and social studies. And I will tell you that for now, what we have available are all 4 content areas for middle school. So our 6th through 8th resources for parents are ready, and they're all linked here. You can see that the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade guides, and those that are already already ready and the additional languages are there, but those are coming soon. And so check back if you need a different language other than English, and you'll see how they're organized here. Now, as our guides are created for 3-5 through K2, those are also going to be added to this page. So this is going to be a page that you will want to kind of get to know. So one of the things that you could do is bookmark that page. So, just like if you're using Chrome, you can click the star and that will bookmark it depending on what browser you use. But if you are looking at your resources and you lose this presentation or you didn't bookmark it, one of the things you can do is if you go into Google and just search Rethink Education Parents, this is going to be one of the top hits. So that's another way that you can get to those resources, but I do recommend to bookmark it as a tip. So that's how you get to the general guides and the content specific guides. So let's talk about the webinar information. So on this slide, you can see that there's a link here for our registration page, which is probably where you went to register for this webinar, or you may have used one of our links off our social media platforms. And there's also a link here to our Rethink playlist. And those are two links that Deepak can put into the chat for you. So either one of those are places that you can go to get registration for our live webinars or for the playlist. And so what you're going to find here is the dates, the topics, the times, the registration links. We do want you to consider signing up for more of our webinars. You can see the current webinars, and there's even the archives in that document as well. I would suggest again that you bookmark those links so that you can find them quickly for the future, but you will also get a copy of this presentation and you'll have those links as well. So after tonight's session, we'll be putting this webinar up on that archive page as well. So as we add new items for parents or for teachers and students, we do share these out on our social media platforms. So if you would like to know when something new is posted, if you're a social media user, please use this information and consider following us on these platforms so that you're always in the know about these resources, and consider sharing these with other parents and caregivers as well so that we can continue to widen our reach of support. So we are currently on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and those are our social media platform handles there with the links that you can get to after you get to the presentation. So once this webinar is over and you have some time to either dig into the resources that you downloaded from Deepak from the chat, or once you get the slideshow and you go through some of the resources, please consider coming back to this presentation that you'll get in your email and visit us on this specific feedback link. Now, what this is for is if you use a parent guide or you use a general guide, we want to know what you think about those guides so that we can continue to improve our resources for you. So the resource feedback link is on this slide. So when you get the presentation and you do use it, we would love to hear your thoughts about exactly what you like about those guides. So we really appreciate you attending tonight's Caregiver webinar. We would love to know if this session was helpful for you. And Deepak just put in the link to the specific feedback form, but he's getting ready to drop another link in the chat. And this one is just a quick little survey on what you thought about tonight's webinar. So please consider completing this short feedback form for us so that we can keep making these webinars helpful for you and making sure that they meet your needs. I'm also going to send a follow-up email with links to this presentation as well as to the feedback form that you use using the email that you used to register for this webinar. We're going to stay on the call for a little bit in case anyone has any questions. But I do want to say thank you for attending the webinar tonight. We hope it's been helpful. We hope to see you at our next webinar on December 15th, where we will be talking about blended learning. And we'd love to have you back. Spread the word, and let's have a great webinar in December as well. But thank you so much for your time this evening. I hope you got something great out of it. We'll be staying on the line, but I do want to say thank you and good night.